Hello and welcome to Every Horror Movie on Netflix, the show where we watch, review, and discuss every horror movie on Netflix. I'm Chris as always, and I'm here with Patrick.
Hello.
Patrick is back from his, never mind, he's not back.
I'm still here.
He's back on the show.
Last week, I was too busy going to a Muppets-themed burlesque show to join the recording. Fortunately, there were no oddly themed burlesque shows tonight, so I was able to rejoin, but I am still in the spookiest city in America, New Orleans.
I feel like you have to have a really specific childhood and set of experiences and interests to appreciate that show.
Oh, you absolutely do, and I have that exact set of experiences. It was squarely in my wheelhouse.
Well, we're also here with Steven, as always. Hello.
Hi.
And happy Halloween! You know, it's that time of year. Finally, the October is peaking,
and so are we.
And so are we,
because we just learned some really awesome news since the last time we spoke to you all.
Yeah. We're
in fucking Variety. Don't bury the lead.
Yeah,
this is huge.
We were covered in Variety in a rundown of like the 12 best horror podcasts to listen to for Halloween or something like that, and in great company.
Oh yeah, like all of my favorite horror podcasts are on that list, including one that no longer exists anymore. So I was shook, guys, when Patrick sent us that news.
Yeah, I mean, I said to someone earlier today, it was just so surreal. I felt like I've been losing my mind since I received this news. It's like, I read Variety. Like, I'm not supposed to be in Variety. It's just very strange, but an absolute delight. And, thanks to this writer for picking us up and doing a little research. I appreciated that they learned a little something about the show and noticed that we never use our last names strategically, perhaps.
Can I just say, I did LOL that they referred to all three of us as amiable.
Yeah, they clearly didn't listen too closely.
They clearly have never been behind the scenes, nor would I expect them to be. That gave me a good chuckle.
Nor would we wish that on anyone.
No, God.
But yeah, we'll put those links in our show notes, so check them out. And because not enough people click through the article these days, so make sure you visit them, give them some traffic, so they write more articles about us. That'd be fantastic.
It feels like we're gloating a little bit, but I think we should thank our fans, whether you're here for your second episode, whether you've been around this whole time. I mean, God bless you if that's the case, and also hope you have a good therapist. Just thank you. Thanks for helping us keep this dream going.
Yeah, I mean, because, frankly, it's a cheesy thing and whatever, but I think it's fair to say that after 4 fucking years and however many episodes, I don't think we'd still just be sitting here doing this shit if we didn't have some sense of at least somebody out there listening and enjoying it. And we get that, Thanks you all for listening and commenting and telling us what you thought and when you agreed with us and when you thought we were insane and giving us recommendations. And we love it and we love you.
Absolutely. So we're here today to talk about The Conjuring, which I picked for our movie. It's not an obscure Netflix movie. This is probably one of the bigger studio movies that we've done on this show. But it has a lot of Halloween energy, at least in my opinion. So I figured we should watch it and discuss it if we were going to watch it and discuss it around Halloween time. But before we get into that, we always like to do a little catch up on what else we've been doing that's horror related. And it's the perfect time of year to be, peaking in our horror media consumption. So what have you guys been up to?
Guys, have y'all seen Lamb yet? I don't even know if I've asked you this.
God damn it, I want to, though.
Fuck. Lamb is so fucking good. It is beautiful, understated, shocking, unlike anything you've fucking seen. Incredibly acted, beautifully shot. It's so fucking weird. For those of you who may be out there and not know anything about it, it's about a couple who's raising a lamb, and I'm really not going to say anything else other than that. It takes some disturbing and completely unexpected and funny turns. It's one of the weirdest and most astonishing things I've seen in a long time, and I can't wait to see it again. That's Lamb. That's my pitch for Lamb.
It sounds very A24.
It is very A24.
It sounds
in
like
the best way.
Yeah, it sounds great. I have a couple of friends who've seen it who are urging me daily to go out and check it out. How horror is it? I mean, it looks like a movie that would be, by definition, very hard to categorize.
It is very hard to categorize. It's one of those movies where horrifying things happen in it, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what fucking genre you would call it. I guess if I were to pick a genre, it would be horror. Okay. But certainly, not your traditional fare. But it's unsettling from moment one, for sure. I would say it evokes dread and suspense from moment one. So I think it fits into horror, for sure.
Oh, that's all I need. Yeah, that sounds great.
My other quick plug for this week. This one definitely is not strictly horror, but it does have big Halloween energy, and it's an annual Halloween must do appointment reading for me is Batman The Long Halloween. Classic Batman graphic novel. If y'all have never read it before, just one of the seminal, super influential works on a lot of people's Batman movies and Batman stories in general. And it takes place between two Halloweens, so the opening chapter and final chapter both take place at Halloween, but the whole thing just has fucking huge Halloween energy. Batman's tracking a serial killer who kills on holidays, called the Holiday Killer, and everything, like I said, has Halloween energy to it. The artist Tim Sale's work is gorgeous, and he gives the Rogues Gallery a very Monster Mash kind of feel. It feels like you're looking at a cast of Halloween characters, and I read it every fucking October, getting deep into it and feeling the vibe again this year.
The Holiday Killer, is that the same as the Calendar Man?
I'm not going to tell you.
Or the January Man.
Oh, no, Calendar Man is like Hannibal Lecter in that, isn't he? He's a separate character.
No spoilers. I mean, the reveal of the Holiday Killer, it's a great, it's a big twist. There's a lot of work done to throw a lot of red herrings into the story and to distract and mislead you from who the killer is in the end. And you may even have differing interpretations in the end of who the killer actually was.
Well, I just remember about 10 years ago when Batman Arkham City, the video game, came out, there was a trophy you would get if you went and you talked to Calendar Man on the holidays, every holiday. And so for about 8 months or something, I was going and talking to Calendar Man on actual holidays. It was Thanksgiving, and I was like, hold on, guys, I need the TV for 5 minutes. And Calendar Man would give you a little poem about the holiday. I never got through them all, so I never got the trophy. But that was a good little holiday tradition for me for a few months there. Speaking of video games, the horror thing that I consumed recently, I played through Alan Wake Remastered, which is
dude, I've been wanting to play that.
It's a remastering of Alan Wake Not Remastered, which came out, I don't even know, 10, 12, 13 years ago, something crazy. And it was kind of a mediocre game. It did a lot of things really well. It was very interesting. It builds a lot of atmosphere. It's about a writer in the Pacific Northwest who is like kind of a Stephen King analog, and he gets drawn into this mystery and this horror experience. And it seems to have some connections to a book that he wrote but can't remember writing. And that sounds really interesting. And the story was interesting. The gameplay was so. I think they tried a lot of really ambitious ideas and then kind of realized that none of them really worked the way they wanted them to, and so kind of just fell back on being like a third-person shooter. But I played through the whole thing, which is more than I can say for most games these days, so it must have been doing some things right. I would certainly check out a sequel to Alan Wake, and I think they're making one, so...
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
What platform is that on?
The remastered one is available for PS4 as well as PS5 and Xbox One and the new Xbox.
Got it.
Steven, what have you been up to, man?
Well, I've been trying to watch a lot of spooky shit, but I've wound up watching a lot of garbage that I'm not going to mention here. I'll say the movie Warlock from the 90s. I don't know if you guys remember this VHS cover. It always kind of intrigued me as a kid. with Julian Sands as a warlock who gets transported into the present day. It's a piece of shit. Richard E. Grant is in it, and even he isn't compelling in it. So skip that one if it's been in your queue. I watched a couple of things I can't really talk about. One of them I can't name yet. It's a movie that we'll review down the line when I get to pick. But shameless self-plug, I'm going to be repping Amon on a podcast called Talking Musical History. So we watched the off-Broadway Toxic Avenger musical last week, and I'll be guesting on their show next week to talk about it. Again, can't really share my thoughts here except to say that I don't know that I would recommend it for our listeners. But stay tuned. I'll have more details on that soon. So that's been my spookiness for the past couple of weeks.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's talk about our spookiness for tonight.
Our spookiness for tonight is The Conjuring, James Wan's 2013 horror masterpiece.
In Wan we trust.
I don't know. Now, I saw this movie in the theater, and at the time, I remember there was a lot of buzz around this movie. People were like, "Oh yeah, The Conjuring, it is too scary for you." They were like, The Conjuring. I think the thing I kept hearing was like, The Conjuring is like the only movie to be rated R for terror. like it was rated R, but the only reason it deserved an R rating is because it was too fucking scary for you.
Oh my god.
Well, I saw it at the drive-in theater, actually, which gave me a very specific experience with this, and I think probably clouded my perception of it in a negative way. I was glad that I got to revisit it on a TV screen, because I just saw it on a super dark ass, like, those drive-in screens are not very easy to tell what's going on a lot of the time, and it did not make much of an impression on me. So I'm glad that I got this chance to sit down, see it on a proper screen with proper sound for the first time.
Can we do a brief tangent? Because drive-ins are like all the rave now. I mean, especially because of COVID. You know, they've made a huge comeback.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of the drive-in experience. It's never worked for me. Like, in theory, it sounds like a fun date night or something, but you wind up, like, barely being able to see what's going on in the fucking movie, like Patrick said. The sound's all weird. There's too much activity around you. If you haven't cleaned the inside of your windshield in a while, it's an especially unpleasant experience. I don't really dig it.
I love doing it like once a year just for the experience, but you have to pick something that you don't care that much about actually seeing. Like, it's more about sitting in the car, eating some snacks, making out, talking to your friends, whatever the hell, not paying that much attention to the movie, because it's just fundamentally not a great way to see a movie.
Yeah, I've never been to a drive-in. I always have been curious about going. First, it's hard to find the combination of a movie that I want to see at a drive-in, but don't care that much about seeing. And then also finding someone at the same time who wants to go with me.
But even for like screenings of older films, the ones that I would want to pay to see, I wouldn't want to see in my car. Even if I've seen Poltergeist a million times, I don't want to go to the drive-in, even if it's right down the street in Monroe for like $8 or whatever. It's just not appealing to me.
There's a new drive-in here in Monroe, and I wanted to go see Christine. They played Christine, and I was like, that's good, because that's a movie like I'm familiar with. I don't need to watch it that carefully, right? But it would be fun to see with a bunch of cars.
Well, it's a good movie for your car too.
Yeah,
your car would enjoy that a lot.
The car would enjoy it.
I think that's part of what I'm saying, though, Steven, is I don't necessarily even want to see a good movie to begin with at the drive-in. I want to see like almost just trash. I want to see something
grindhouse
mediocre. Yeah, that I'm not like. I want to see Hubie Halloween at the drive-in, and that's probably the only context in which I want to see Hubie Halloween.
I saw Bowfinger at the drive-in. I think
with
that
Blair
might be
Witch
more
Project, right?
Yes, back when they did things alphabetically.
We've heard that story before. Okay, so The Conjuring, though. I saw it in an actual movie theater with a crowd, which I might allude to later. There was a couple. Speaking of making out, there was a couple of teenagers sitting right next to me making out at length during this movie.
Right next to you?
Right next to me.
Oh, that's not good.
So much so that eventually I leaned over and I said, "Don't you guys have a car?"
Are you serious?
Get your finger out of there.
I did. I had to, because they were like, it wasn't just they were making out, they were like giggling and shit. And I was like, listen, I don't need this in the next chair when I'm watching the scary movie. No. Anyway, So, a very, very simple premise for The Conjuring. We have all right, let's get this out of the way. The Conjuring universe is based on the alleged real life exploits of Ed and Lorraine Warren, paranormal investigators, demonologists, etc., who have in real life a career of, cracking the case, doing Scooby-Doo shit, busting ghosts around the place. So with that comes, problematic connotations like, oh, they're snake oil salesmen. Oh, they're taking advantage of people. Oh, their methods are abusive, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that is all valid. I'm not sure we need to talk about it in the context of The Conjuring.
No. I'm glad you got that out of the way right out the gate, because it is worth mentioning, yes, there's a lot of controversy surrounding these two. I'm curious, I didn't do any research on this, unfortunately, because it's been a very busy day. This is billed in the opening moments of the movie as like a case that they've never talked about before.
Because it's too malevolent.
Is there any validity to that, or did James Wan dream this up for the screen and get permission from the Warrens to use their identities?
I don't know, but while Chris looks it up, I found it hilarious that it specifically says they've never talked about this case because it was too malevolent. I just love that wording.
That's James Wan's next movie, Malevolent.
That's what the movie is rated R for, is malevolence. It's the first movie to be rated R for malevolence.
Apparently, it's based on true events. I don't know if it's events that were like under wraps until this movie came out. That might be embellished, but apparently it's just based on a case that they did indeed work on.
All right, well, set up the movie, Chris, now that we're 45 minutes into this episode.
Well, I mean, it's a very familiar story. Family moves into a house. The house is haunted, and they have to consult outside experts to cleanse the house. That's all there is to it. There's a man and a woman, married couple, and then they have a plethora of daughters. And I don't know how many they have.
5.
It seems like there's a different daughter in every scene. That's something that kind of bothered me the first time I watched this movie, because I couldn't keep the characters straight, like the kids straight. And then on this watch, I was kind of like, that's okay. The point is, there's just a lot of kids in this house, and I don't need to know specifically.
I'm shocked. There are 5? There are 5 of them?
There are 5, and I also could not keep track of them. There, in my mind, there's Joey King, there's the old one, and then there's 3 random ones.
I thought there were just 2. What? I mean, I did watch it. Like, at the end of the movie, if you'd asked me how many daughters there were, which is what we're doing, I would have said 2, maybe 3. Maybe there's a third one that pops up every now and again.
I would have said 4 up to a certain point. I forget what it was that finally made me go, oh, wow, there are 5. Shit.
No, there's a lot of daughters, and some of them don't get a lot of screen time. Like there's the aloof teenage one who just kind of wants not to be in the house. But, and I think that's sort of because it's based on a true story, and they're like, oh, well, so-and-so has to be in there. And so it's like they don't want to have composite characters or anything. They want to have everybody so everyone can look at them and say, oh, there I am on the screen there.
I mean, I presume these are based on real people, and they must have had some involvement in the film, or like signing off. Do they use their actual names?
I think so.
Okay, interesting. I want to read more after the cast.
Yeah, read more after the cast.
There are pictures that purport to be of them in the credits, though.
Oh, that's true.
And I assume they're pictures of the real people.
Yeah. So this is all based on real people, supposedly true events. Who knows?
Okay.
It's a horror movie, basically.
Well, and Chris, I feel like our audience would be well served. At the very least, I would be well served, because it is Halloween, and you picked this movie because it has big Halloween energy, and you talk about big Halloween energy a lot. What's big Halloween energy? Define it for me, who has forgotten, and our listeners who may have never heard you explain it before.
Big Halloween energy supposes that there's a difference between things you will find in the horror genre and things you would find at a Halloween store. and everything inside the Halloween store fits in the horror genre, but not everything in the horror genre fits in the Halloween store.
I follow 100%.
And so
I get it.
This movie has big Halloween energy because it's a haunted house, for one thing. But the kitchen sink approach to the spooks and scares in this movie gives it big Halloween energy. I mean, you have everything. You have fucking haunted house, haunted wardrobe, haunted hangman tree,
Witch.
dark spirits, witches, and
Possessions.
ghosts, and demons and devils, and so on and so forth.
Okay, gotcha.
Just for starters, haunted doll, for Christ's sake.
Gotcha. So you would say, would you say the movie Halloween has big Halloween energy?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Largely because it takes place on Halloween.
Oh, okay, gotcha. All right.
I would agree with that too, even though we don't need to relitigate this, but it doesn't look like it was set on Halloween, but it's got enough of the trappings.
Yes, that's true.
It's got the pumpkins and everything else,
Yep.
Kids trick-or-treating. I think, Chris, I think my definition is a slight variation on yours. It might actually mean the same thing, but a movie that has big Halloween energy for me has something iconic in it that you can put on your front lawn on Halloween and people are going to know what movie it's from.
So in this movie, it would be Annabelle.
It'd be Annabelle. You certainly wouldn't want to put a noose up in your tree.
No.
But yeah, definitely be Annabelle. Maybe the music box.
I want life-size standees of Ed and Lorraine Warren as played by Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga.
Now that's scary.
Dude, this is like really, I guess this is tangential, but it's just segueing from Steven mentioning Annabelle. I did not realize there's a real life Annabelle. Like Ed and Lorraine Warren actually investigated an Annabelle, and there is an Annabelle in their museum. They have a museum that I guess you could visit at one point, but is now closed. And it was just in real life a Raggedy Ann doll. And of course they couldn't do that in the movie. But there's a real life Annabelle. That was a bit of a mind blower for me.
They made the most horrifying doll they could muster. And so, funny story, I actually tried to show this to somebody. I showed this to my friend and his girlfriend on Halloween night one year. Or I tried to. But the girlfriend was a little bit anxious about horror movies to begin with. And the opening shot, which is an extreme close-up on Annabelle's face, she said nope, and she put a pillow over her face. And it was still over her face 5 minutes later. So we said, all right, we'll turn the movie off. Rated R for spooky is right.
It is an outstandingly designed doll. I forgot that Annabelle was actually in this movie. And also that she's in this movie in an interestingly like supporting kind of role. I remembered her being like a primary antagonist in one of these movies, but she really isn't. They just spun her off into her own franchise, which is wild.
And that's something that's really cool about the Conjuring franchise is that it has established all these iconic characters, like the nun, for example, Annabelle. I think they're trying to make the Crooked Man happen from The Conjuring 2.
And the butler, right?
Maybe. I would love the butler to be in The Conjuring 4. The butler made me do it.
The cook, the thief, his wife, and her butler.
But it's one of the things I like about this movie is that like there's a lot of things like Annabelle. Any one of these things could have carried a movie for like the hide and clap game. There's like all these like kind of fun ideas that lesser movies, such as some of the movies we've seen on Netflix, would just be like, oh, that's our movie. There's going to be a game called hide and clap, but there's going to be a ghost clapping. And this movie is just like, oh, here's all this stuff.
Yeah.
And it just throws it at you.
Well, I mean, since you brought that up, I guess I'll take this moment to begin outing myself as a little bit of a Conjuring, not hater, but detractor. That's one of the things.
I wish we could high five right now, virtually.
We can. Here, put your hand up to the screen.
All right, there we go. Yeah,
it feels so good. But that's one of the things that bugs me a little bit about this movie is it seems almost scattered. And I guess I like that idea of the kitchen sink approach and throwing in a little bit of everything in theory. But in the actual movie, I feel at times almost a little bit confused by what I'm supposed to be focusing on or kind of what the focal point of the movie is. And I guess it's interesting because I don't know, it is James Wan, and you can compare it to Insidious. I think is a pretty easy thing to compare it to. Fucking love Insidious. Pretty sure I gave Insidious a view it. Insidious is something that throws a ton of shit at the wall, but it throws a ton of shit at the wall. And it's a lot of different things, and it's high volume of all the different things. I feel like The Conjuring throws you like little bits of a lot of different things, and it's like instead of being assaulted, I'm just kind of like looking around, looking for little particles of things floating in the air, like trying to latch on to one of them, and I find it a little frustrating.
It's all just kind of scattered to the four winds, is sort of how I felt watching it. I had a similar experience where I'm like, but I appreciate that about it, because I think to do a movie like this for a modern audience, it's not enough just to like rehash Poltergeist or something, you know? Like I appreciate that James Wan, as in pretty much everything he's ever done, takes a lot of swings, big and small, and tries to, you know, show you something you haven't seen before in one of these kinds of movies. This is definitely a movie where like I went in with certain expectations based on the trailer, based on the premise, and not everything really worked for me, but I appreciated that there were some interesting diversions. Even if they don't work, it's clear that there's an intelligent mind behind this that's trying to surprise you.
Well, and it's an interesting exercise, especially for him, because it is, at least by his normal standards, it feels like an exercise in restraint. Because, I mean, if you compare it to essentially anything else that he's done, which is just, you know, he's just buck wild. I mean, if you compare this to Malignant, you're almost like, this is the same director. It's interesting to watch him dial back a little bit, I guess.
I would love to compare this to Malignant for a brief moment because, you know, I feel like I'm still unpacking that movie, a month and a half later. And it's been interesting to go back and look at James Wan movies that I saw before that didn't do really anything for me upon first viewing. I don't know. I feel like I have a little bit more confidence in him as the director of Malignant, seeing what he was able to pull off in some of his earlier, more iconic work. I had this question in my mind: is he just a complete madman and Malignant is like a trash masterpiece by accident, or is he actually like a really qualified craftsman? And I'm leaning toward the latter after revisiting this movie.
Oh, I absolutely think he's a very qualified craftsman. I think I was a little bit of a doubter, a little bit of a hater of him for a while, but I slowly put together this. I don't know. I felt like it was assembling the pieces of his personality, and like Aquaman and Malignant and Furious 7 and Insidious and everything. And then finally I'm like, oh, this is who this guy is. Okay, I like it. And I at this point would say I love pretty much everything he's done, except for arguably his most acclaimed and beloved work, which is this movie. And actually, I shouldn't say except for. I don't dislike this movie, but I would say it's the movie I like the least of his.
I think I agree. As much as I love James Wan and I like the idea of The Conjuring, I don't know if I like The Conjuring that much. And that whole sort of the scattered approach really didn't work for me on this watch. And I found myself bored a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. If you're watching this movie for the first time, I think the volume of jump scares and jump scare setups will kind of propel you through, but knowing where the jump scares are on the second watch, because I still remembered them because they're good, you're kind of like just waiting for them to happen, and there's not a lot of plot and not a lot of interesting stuff to kind of connect all the little spooky moments that they're throwing at you. Insidious, for whatever reason, I am more invested in the story of. I think the characters are better. I think the story is tighter and events logically flow from one place to the other. And you don't have as much of that like, all right, well, let's tell you about this witch now. Okay, well, let me tell you about this Victorian boy now. Like, you know, all this stuff that's kind of going on in The Conjuring. I like some of the trappings that James Wan gives it. I think maybe a little cheekily, like, you know, the scroll at the beginning. That
I love that.
Same,
There's like kind of these like retro flourishes that are kind of where he's like knowingly making sort of a throwback movie of a genre that wasn't made much anymore at the time, like just kind of the straight-laced haunted house exorcism movie, and he wanted to give it that look like you're reading the back of the Amityville Horror book or something.
Well, there's a couple of nice zooms in there too.
Yeah,
it works wonderfully, and I think this paved the way for a movie that I know at least you love, Chris, Ouija: Origin of Evil, which also has that very throwback look with the cigarette burns and the film print and fake film print and everything. So I'm glad this movie exists, if only so that other filmmakers could feel confident evoking that era and atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, I think it does a nice job with the characters. I thought it was interesting that you felt you connected the characters in Insidious more, because I think Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson are both excellent actors, especially Vera Farmiga. She outshines Patrick Wilson by a long shot in this, but they work really, really well together. They have a nice chemistry, and you feel them as people, and you even start to feel the family sort of thinly sketched at times as they are as people as well. I mean, Lily Taylor, Jesus Christ, like Lily Taylor brings so much charisma and presence and depth to anything that she's in. She brings so much to High Fidelity in fucking like 90 seconds of the movie. But, you know, by the time you get to a climactic scene that we'll discuss in the spoiler room, like, you feel the connections those people have to each other, and there's big emotional resonance to the climax of the movie. And that stood out to me, especially on this viewing.
We get a lot of kind of obvious setups for spooks in this movie over the first, like, 15, 20, 30 minutes. And I have to say, the first time around when I saw this, I didn't like it at all. I don't like Patrick Wilson. I think he always comes across as hokey.
That's heresy. Get the fuck out of here.
Not a fan. And I mean, there was a period of time where, like, I would watch anything. It seemed like he was in every movie I wanted to see him. He was in Watchmen. He was in Hard Candy. He was in what's the movie with Kate Winslet about the Little Children. And I always thought it like he just hit all the wrong notes in those movies.
Have you seen Aquaman?
I have not. And I
see, yeah, listen, I agree with you. Patrick Wilson does always feel hokey, but I think it's almost always intentionally deployed and kind of brilliantly deployed. He's a very talented guy in my mind.
He's very good at playing a very specific type of like mediocre guy.
Yeah, okay. I will say this time around, I responded much better to his performance. Obviously, he pales in comparison to Vera Farmiga. I mean, she's just fucking incredible in this.
I gotta tell you about Aquaman, though.
Okay, tell me about Aquaman. Because I will say I have a tab of acid that was gifted to me by a friend that is probably going to sit in a drawer for like a fucking year, but I think I might have to pull it out for Aquaman.
You're going to have
you don't need it. It'll be too much. You'll already feel like you're on acid if you watch Aquaman sober. Aquaman is insane.
You'll be like, what's in this?
Aquaman plus acid will kill you. That will be your cause of death.
That's a PSA for you.
The mind can only take so much.
All right, tell me about Aquaman. Let's get this out of the way.
Well, the most hilarious thing about Aquaman is that James Wan cast his buddy Patrick Wilson to play Ocean Master. I'm not going to say he's not Aquaman's arch nemesis, but like one of his top nemesis.
In the comics, he is. Yeah.
Wait. Hold on. His name is Ocean Master? That is the character's name. Okay.
Well, that's his title. He's Aquaman's brother, and he seeks the title of Ocean Master for reasons that you'll see when you watch the movie.
In the comics, that is just his name.
Yes.
So, yeah, they had to pretty it up. They had to dress it up a little bit, tart it up a little bit for the movie.
But Ocean Master, he's a comic book villain who's about as sensational as the name Ocean Master would suggest. But it's just Patrick Wilson in Aquaman. And it's just the best kind of dissonance between this, like, seeing this, like, Patrick Wilson just as a comic book villain, that I don't know, who should have played Ocean Master, Patrick?
I can't think of anyone better than Patrick Wilson. He's amazing, and every time he has this musical cue that is literally this dun dun dun, and multiple times like he delivers sort of a sinister or impactful line, and as soon as he says it, the score just thunders dun dun dun, and it's fucking hilarious.
He seems miscast because it's just Patrick Wilson in this kind of unusual role. But anyway, go on, Stephen.
Well, to get back to what I was trying to say, if I can remember what the fuck I was trying to say.
You mean you weren't trying to talk about Aquaman?
The first time I saw this, I was like, okay, I see you, movie. I see your setup, and I can predict what the jump scare is going to be. This time, it's been what, like 8-9 years since this came out. As I try to do always with Amon movies, I tried to go in with an open mind, a clean slate, and some of it worked for me. I got on this movie's level. I actually did get creeped out a couple of times, even by some of the more obvious setups, like, everybody has their own idea of how the clapping game is going to pay off, and I got a little bit of a chill when it finally did this time. I think the first time I laughed out loud, probably because I was out for blood. This time it worked. It had the Halloween energy that Chris prescribed to us, and I was grateful for that.
My 3 favorite scares in this movie are the one you just mentioned, where the clapping hands come out behind. Is it Vera in that scene?
No, it's the mother. It's Lily.
In the
Lily, that's right.
The whatever you call that, the
armoire. Yeah. It's that. It's the scene where the witch is suddenly crouching on top of the armoire and then jumps on the fucking kid.
Love
Amazing. That. And also the scene where Vera's hanging up the laundry and a sheet blows away and like catches around a spectral shape of a human body behind her and then like blows dramatically all over the fucking house. It's great.
Yeah, that's all very spooky.
Yeah, but also besides those like big, very visual moments too, I mean, I think we have to give some props to the sound design in this too. I mean, the house creaks and squeaks, and it's just that all felt very well deployed to me. Not, you know, speaking as someone who's necessarily super well schooled in the construction of that, but to me, it felt like that, I don't know, mood was just very well created through all that stuff and those little kind of unsettling moments. Beyond the big kind of banner things we were just talking about.
Well, there's squeaks, there's knocks, there's banging. You hear the rope, the hangman's rope stretching when Vera's out under the hanging tree. There's all kinds of little subtle details in the sound design that at least create an atmosphere, if not create terror. So. Mm-hmm. Well, while we're talking about all the spooks and scares, maybe we should go down to the spoiler room so we can talk about them in more detail. What do you think?
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
So who wants to review it? Who wants to review it first? Who wants to be brave?
I'm brave.
All right, Steven, would you review it, anyway. Cue it, or screw it?
I would give this a cue it. I've only seen it twice, when it first came out, and now I liked it a lot better this time. But I can think of a lot of kitchen sink horror movies, even those made by James Wan more recently, that I would recommend over this. I mean, I think it's like on a craftsmanship level, it's very, very solid and impressive at times, but didn't offer quite enough new for me for it to be of any note. And I did find it kind of boring at times. I think it takes a while to figure out what the main interest is. But it does have big Halloween energy. This is a movie that I would totally just like throw on in the background while I'm like making some popcorn on the stove and putting on the orange and purple lights and getting in the mood for the spooky season. So cue it. Patrick?
I'll give it a cue it too. I enjoyed it. I think it kind of drags in places. And like I said, it feels a little just scattered to me in a way that was frustrating. And, frankly, if you're listening to this show and if you like horror, you've probably fucking seen The Conjuring.
Yeah, that's true.
It's fairly inescapable, I think, over the past decade if you're into this sort of stuff at all. But, if you haven't seen it before, I would say don't rush to see it, but don't avoid it. Chris?
I'm going to give it a view it, but it's a more hesitant and a lower view it than you might expect. I didn't really enjoy this movie that much on this rewatch. I thought it was a little disorganized. I thought it dragged a bit. I thought that once the magic of the jump scares is lost on you, it doesn't have a whole lot to offer in some long stretches of the movie. But I mean, it's fun, and I would definitely say that anyone who hasn't seen it should see it because it's gonna scare you. It's interesting enough, and it will scare you. There are enough spooks and enough different types of scares, including jump scares, that you will be scared watching this movie. And even I, thinking I knew the movie, was pretty fucking terrified in a couple spots that I forgot about. And on top of that, it's just, like I said, like Annabelle on its own is worth a view it. Hide and Clap on its own is worth a view it. There's a couple other devices in this that I think are just so fun and creative that I think it's worth a watch. It's time well spent, even if everything doesn't really add up or move the way I would want it to. So give it a view it. And with that said, it's time to move on to the spoiler room where we will talk more freely about all the twists and turns and what happens to this house and do the Warrens save the day. But first, if you're interested, go check us out online. Every horror movie on Netflix.com, on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at AmonCast, EHMONcast. Leave us a note. Tell us what you think of The Conjuring. We love to hear our listeners' responses. And don't forget to rate us and review us on your podcast service of choice. We love to hear what people think of the show.
Especially if they work for Variety.
I was just going to say, I need to, I'll meet you guys down there in a minute. I just got to fold this issue of Variety back together. I'm going to bring it down with me.
Yeah. If you work for a national or international trade publication, please don't review us on your podcast service. Just review us in the pages of your publication, please. All right. We'll be back in a few seconds in the spoiler room. We're going to go down to the cellar or the boarded up spoiler room. What horrors await? Welcome back. We are down here in the spoiler room, getting ready to spoil everything about James Wan's The Conjuring. And
James Wan's 2013 film, The Conjuring, which
2013 masterpiece.
Are we still in the embargo period for spoilers on that? Should we be worried?
You know what? Some people, some of our listeners may have only recently started watching horror movies because they're 13 years old. They were not alive when this movie came out.
You know, they're 13 years old. They were flipping through the latest issue of Variety.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Their favorite periodical.
So this movie, it kind of, it's ostensibly from the point of view of the Warrens, but the good first half of it is just this family being persecuted in this haunted house, kind of on their own before they cross paths with the Warrens. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, what's the other movie that does that?
I think I might know what you're talking about, but I can't name it. I did like the kind of, we're riding these two different roads, we're hopping back and forth, and you know they're going to intersect, you just don't know when, and I thought that was kind of fun.
Yes, and there's another movie I'm thinking of, but I can't think of what it is that does that.
Clinical.
I
don't know. Mentioned in Variety. It's just top of mind. I don't know.
Oh, it's like Heat.
Classic horror flick.
Oh, you got these two forces, and you know they're going to meet at some point.
It has been a few episodes since you've referenced Heat. You were overdue.
Define a few.
Like 1.5.
Well, anyway, let me tell you about me watching this in the theater, because, spoiler alert, one of the first things that happens to this family right upon their moving into this house is their dog is killed by demons, supposedly.
That was sad. What was that dog's name? Like Casey or something?
Sadie.
Oh, yeah. Sadie was so cute.
She was. And here was my theater experience. You know, as I said, people in the theater were not quite, attentive to this movie. And you get through the whole prologue. People are kind of horsing around. That dog showed up on screen.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone in the theater was like, oh, my God. And then when the dog died, dead silence. And this movie had everybody's attention for the rest of the show.
That's gotta be why so many horror movies, especially that we've watched on Netflix, kill a fucking dog.
But they don't do it as well as The Conjuring.
They don't. They don't. I didn't feel that it was like prurient or gross or cheap when the dog died. I just genuinely felt sad for the family and for the dog. It was well done.
Because the dog doesn't want to go in the house. The dog has a character. The dog is given personality. And we zoom in on that dog, and the dog's like, fuck no, I'm not going in that haunted house. Fuck no, I'm not going in that haunted house.
Well, and they also very tastefully show the dog's corpse in a wide shot. Like, you never see a close up of what damage has been done to the dog.
Yeah, you don't see or hear the dog actually die.
I think you hear it. Oh no, you just hear the kid screaming when she finds it. But yeah, why are we talking about something that happens in the first 20 minutes of the movie in the spoiler room, though?
Oh, because it's I think it's I didn't think to mention it before, and I think that if you didn't see the movie, it's important that scene pulls you into the movie.
Well, I'll allow it.
All right. But yeah, I mean, what else was there to talk about, man? We got spooks.
There's a witch.
There's a witch.
A witch sacrificed her baby in, I don't know, 1600 or something on this property, and then hung herself and proclaimed her love for Satan, and she's cursed the entire land and all the parcels it was divided up into.
So this is where we have to add another disclaimer, because we got in a big argument with one of our other friends on in the group chat about whether it was ethical for this movie to hang its plot device and villain on a real-life woman who was killed in the Salem witch trials.
And, I mean, no pun intended with the hang there. I mean...
Right,
yeah.
right. But the villain is in passing, said to be related to a real-life woman who was tried at the Salem witch trials, possibly executed at the Salem witch trials. So is it in poor taste that these screenwriters, who I think are like devout Catholics and also wrote The Reaping, which is kind of a religious film, would kind of take this real-life victim of a real-life atrocity and be like, actually, she was a witch and a devil worshiper, and that's what we're going to kind of spin our movie off of? It's not in good taste. I'm not going to get too bent out of shape about it, but I think it's worth mentioning.
Sure.
When you say The Reaping, do you mean that Hilary Swank piece of garbage? Like after she won the Oscar?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I watched that shit on DVD.
You fucking animal.
I was a Hilary Swank fan, and I watched The Reaping, and I was like, oh, well, that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we have a similar trajectory in Hilary Swank fandom there. That's interesting.
Yeah.
But there's a witch. She has resulted in the deaths and possessions of various people on the properties she was associated with over the years, which our family is now living in. And she finally ends up possessing Lily Taylor, the mom.
Yeah, the MO of this witch is she possesses like the mother, and then the mother sacrifices the kids, I guess, to Satan. And so not only are we being haunted by the witch herself, we're being haunted by the spirits of the generations of people who have lived on this property beforehand, such as Little Victorian Boy, who, I mean, James Wan just loves his Little Victorian boys.
And that doesn't sound right.
And if he can't fit a Little Victorian boy in the film, then he's gonna fit like a carriage, a horse and buggy, or something. Like, he just kind of loves that aesthetic. But we are introduced to Little Victorian boy through this music box that the youngest child finds somewhere out by a hanging tree.
Say his name, Chris. His name is Rory.
Rory, the little small Victorian child. So the youngest child finds this music box, and now here's like some Mandela effect shit, because the gimmick of this music box...
Oh, I hope you're about to say what I think you're about to say, because I had some Mandela effect shit with this music box.
I had big Mandela effect energy with this music box, because the gimmick of the music box is the little girl is like, you open it and you look in the mirror, and when the music stops, you see the ghost behind you. My memory of this fucking movie is that they open the music box 4 or 5 times and you never see anything.
Yes!
You know what?
I had the exact same experience.
I was shocked to actually see something.
What is going on? Did they edit this on us? Because you see something almost every time in the music box in this movie.
I feel so fucking validated right now.
I do too, not to quite the same extreme degree, but I mean, the whole thing with the Mandela effect is that it's about the fallibility of a human memory. So I think we all just forgot about that
But
part.
this is one of my favorite things about this movie since I saw it, and it's not something I would just make up.
Yes.
I think it speaks to the effectiveness of the chills in this movie that actually work and that they can still surprise you on a second go around. I had a couple of experiences like that, this one primarily. Also, the armoire, I thought I knew how that scene ended, and it still scared the fuck out of me, and I was like, wait, I don't remember the arms actually coming out of the thing.
So my explanation for my Mandela effect experience with this was actually seeing it at the drive-in, because I could see what was going on so poorly that I was just like, there's stuff in the mirror. It's often like kind of unclear, and I was like, I just couldn't see it. But regardless, I still at least had the same emotional experience with this that you two did.
The best I can explain it is that I was always expecting a jump scare in the mirror, and there's never really quite a jump scare in the mirror. You see creepy stuff, but it's not presented like a jump scare.
God, I hope I'm not misremembering this, but there is a scene where Lily Taylor is taking, I almost said Lily Tomlin. Lily Taylor is taking sleeping pills because she's got all these bruises, building up on her body, and she's just kind of losing her mind and just wants a good night's sleep. And she closes the mirror, like the bathroom drug cabinet mirror, and there's a lot of negative space, and you expect something to show up there, but it doesn't. And it only pays off later with the music box. And I thought that was kind of cool.
But I'm beside myself about this music box thing. I don't know.
Well, yeah, because that was sort of like one of the main things that I gave the movie credit for, was that it, at least in my mind or my memory, it sets you up so many times to see something in the music box and makes it scary without ever actually showing you something in the music box, except that's completely untrue.
It's untrue. And I used to think like they could have gone back to that music box 10 more times and I would have been eating out of their palm 10 more times.
Oh, same.
So I don't know, fallibility of memory, I guess. But yeah, I remember there being nothing in that mirror the whole movie. Disappointing.
Well, yeah, but I mean, also still the things you do see in it are still scary. I mean, I think it works. It just, wasn't the thing that I thought I admired it for.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever used this phrase before, this term, but it's kind of an artful jump scare. In that, like, it works so well that you can forget that it was a jump scare.
Yeah.
Well, the kind of the genius of it is they tell you. It's like usually they don't tell you when there's going to be a jump scare, but the girl's like, oh yeah, when the music stops, that's when you're going to see the ghost. And so it's so scary.
I guess I'm comparing it to something that is much scarier, which may be unfair to this movie, but in that sense, it reminds me of sort of the mechanization behind the alley dream sequence in Mulholland Drive, where like they tell you what you're gonna fucking see. You're gonna see it. You just don't expect them to actually go there.
Yeah.
And when they do, it's 10 times more terrifying than you could have anticipated.
Yeah.
And it's like when you play Bloody Mary and you say your name 10 times and you're gonna see the ghost. And then the ghost is never as scary as you want her to be.
Yeah. But yeah, Lily Taylor gets possessed, and at the same time, Bathsheba, the witch, also decides she's going to fuck with the Warrens, too, because she doesn't like them coming around and trying to meddle in her plans. So she ends up possessing Annabelle. This is where Annabelle kind of comes back in and terrorizes the Warrens' daughter.
Which that's all a little bit... There's some weird stuff late in the movie where, like, everyone's driving across the state. And it's like, oh, we gotta go to the hotel. Oh, no, all right, we gotta go back to the house. Oh, we gotta go check on the daughter. Okay, now we gotta go to the motel. All right, now we gotta go to the house. And it's like, it seems to only be there so that we can have this scene with Annabelle. But I'm not complaining. I like to see a little girl get terrified by Annabelle. Why not?
Yeah. I mean, and it all boils down to finally they're pushed into a scenario where shit has gotten so bad that Patrick Wilson has to perform the exorcism on Lily Taylor himself instead of waiting for permission from the Vatican. It's an unauthorized exorcism, very bad, very unorthodox. Not the way these things are supposed to be done, folks, but sometimes you gotta resort to drastic measures.
He says, fuck it, we'll do it live.
Exactly.
Just like Father Amort, man. I love that spirit.
But you know what? Here's something that I will give the movie credit for. And Steven, I know that you especially are a big detractor of the exorcism genre. You don't like the inherent misogyny in exorcism movies and scenes. Ultimately, it's kind of the mother saving herself from the possession. Because Patrick Wilson's exorcism doesn't really work. Maybe it weakens the witch. You could argue that. But she's still 100% that witch by the time he's done with the exorcism.
Okay, that was pretty good, actually. I would say he's partly successful. Like, he doesn't fail, but he certainly doesn't fully succeed in exercising her. We've still got a problem on our hands even after he does his worst.
Yeah, and so Vera kind of Mrs. Warren reaches out to Lorraine. Lorraine Warren reaches out to the mother through the connection they made earlier with the family photos, and it's like, no, you know what? You're a mother. You're a strong woman. These are your kids. You got to come back, fight off this witch, and she kind of unpossesses herself in the end.
Yeah, Ed, Lorraine, and the husband, whose name I now forget, all reach out to her as she's like crouched in sort of the weird sub-basement of this house, struggling with the witch. None of them can touch her. None of them is doing like exorcism shit, but they're all like kind of speaking to her and trying to emotionally appeal to her on their own terms. And that was the moment that really worked for me. And I thought that was just a great scene because you build up the relationships that get you to that moment. And Lily Taylor's performance sells it really well too. But that builds up to a really nice emotional kind of catharsis there where you don't need the exorcism. You don't need people floating and spitting blood and whatever. You just have a pretty powerful scene between four people there where she shakes off this presence on her own finally.
It's a movie about love.
Sure.
Why not?
And it's over like 90 seconds after that. Like they do not dick around. Well, maybe a bit more than 90 seconds, but they do not dick around with too much more after.
The falling action does not last long. It's like after everything we've been through, I feel like I was happy with how quickly they got us out of there into the credits.
I don't know.
Because like it's over almost so quickly that you're expecting, kind of a false ending where it's like, oh, she's still possessed. And then she flies up and sets the house on fire or some shit like that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. But the falling action, we do get a couple scenes, of the family all being happy again. Ed and Lorraine holding each other on the idyllic porch of this house that's now been cleansed, relationship goals. And then them going back and taking the old music box and adding it to their haunted collection. And saying, oh, much like the end of Batman Begins, they're like, there's something we might want to check out on Long Island, which I believe is a reference to the Amityville Horror, which is a case that the Warrens investigated and is in the prologue of The Conjuring 2. Yeah. But there's a little bit of a timeline discrepancy, but that's a nerdy nitpick because the Amityville Horror didn't happen until years after the events of this movie, but...
Wait, how many years? This was 1970, right?
This was 71, and I think the Amityville Horror was like 75, 76, something like that.
Oh, yeah, okay, that checks out. Huh.
Yeah.
So, okay, but after that, the music box opens one last time, and that time we don't see anything, right? Anything. Okay, yeah, okay. That's a good note. You know what scene scared me the most this time?
I'd love to know. Tell me.
The scene where... the girl wakes up and there's someone tugging on her feet and then she sees something behind the door and we can't see what it is, but she's terrified.
Good scene.
Oh, God.
It's a good scene.
That was scary.
God, that sounds like a scene that would be in this movie. I don't remember it, though.
And I think that might be one of my frustrations with this is there are a lot of good fucking scenes in this, like really, really good scenes. But again, it's that thing where it's like it feels almost disjointed or something. Like they don't necessarily all feel of a piece to me.
There's a lot going on. Going on we haven't talked about. Like, the Warrens bring it. We didn't even really talk about how the Warrens, come in and start investigating the house, but obviously they do. But then the Warrens also bring in, two helpers to kind of do paranormal investigations. And they do there's a whole sequence where they're setting up cameras in the house and using UV lights and doing all that stuff.
I love all that shit because I just like the throwback nature of it because we live in an era where there's like a fucking, like every network has their own ghost hunting show, and I like seeing it done with the old tech. I like when like the door opens mysteriously and there's a camera with a tripwire ready to take a picture of whatever comes out of it with the flash bulb and everything. I thought that was so fun.
That was cool.
No, I really liked that stuff, and I really liked the Warren characters and kind of how they talked about their work and how they conducted their work, and it was kind of fun to see them work. And I kind of wish there were more of that. There was more of that in the movie, and that this had been a little bit more about the Warrens, I guess, and less about just all the weird shit happening to this family before they get there.
You know what? I think you might have nailed my major problem with the narrative structure of this movie. I think it would have been better served if the Warrens had been sort of central to the plot from the beginning, rather than the kind of meandering dovetailing that we get over the first 45 minutes or so.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of meandering, like we also have the subplot about how Lorraine Warren was touched too hard by an exorcism and it took her to the edge, and we're afraid that she's going to lose her soul if she doesn't have her exorcism, which they come back to multiple times to raise the stakes of the final encounter. And that doesn't really pan out to anything.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure it really gets panned out to anything in The Conjuring 2 either, which I think maybe The Conjuring 2 is a better movie than The Conjuring 1. I don't know. I'd have to rewatch it.
I remember liking 2 more than I liked 1. But I liked 1 more than I did the first time I watched it this time. So
I think 2 is a little bit less self-serious. It's a little more like Insidious than The Conjuring 1, if I remember correctly.
Well, and this does have just like the lightest little dash of camp to it. You know, it's not played entirely straight.
No.
Yes.
Which I appreciate. And again, it's an interesting thing because it feels like, I mean, especially for Wan, like extreme restraint just to sort of moderate that so carefully in this movie.
I kind of wonder what this would have been like if like Mike Flanagan had done it instead.
Probably pretty fucking similar.
Oh, I think it would have been better.
Especially if I'm thinking of Mike Flanagan in 2013. Like,
because
okay,
I feel like Patrick, because I kind of agree with you. Like, I feel like James Wan's kind of fighting himself in this movie, where he kind of wants to go out there, but he's like, no, this is a serious film about a real story. You have to do it dignity.
I did feel the hand of a studio head multiple times throughout this film, especially knowing like how insane his later films would become in certain moments. It did feel like there was restraint imposed upon him, at least in part.
Yeah.
Something, stray observation that'll probably mean nothing to you guys, but I'll say it for our listeners who may be following along with my journey of fucking loving the NUF Halloween special movie. I did not realize these movies both came out in the same year. And I thought so I mentioned this on the show a couple episodes ago, but there's a couple of demonologists in the WNUF Halloween special who are basically Ed and Lorraine Warren, except they have a cat that is clairvoyant, which is like an adorable addition. And I thought it was a parody of The Conjuring. I had no idea they came out at basically the same time.
Well, maybe I mean, the Warrens, I guess, were known to people who are into this shit, you know, before The Conjuring. And then there's the big lawsuit where, you know, the Warrens possibly sold the rights to their story to some other author, and then he was in litigation with Warner Brothers for years. But that's interesting.
Yeah, just a happy accident, probably.
The Warrens in real life, you can, you know, have your opinions. The Warrens of the Conjuring universe, I love them.
Same. I do want to read more. I mean, I've always heard the term controversial sort of bandied about when it comes to those two, and I definitely want to read more about that. But I think it's very clear that these are like a heavily fictionalized and idealized version of the Warrens, and I like them. I find them very compelling.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a whole separate debate to be had about whether fictionalizing and likabilizing morally questionable characters in real life for film is acceptable. But we decided at the outset of this discussion not to dig into that. Yeah,
and I mean, you're definitely not wrong to say that you hate The Conjuring because you think it sanitizes stuff that shouldn't be sanitized.
I don't hate it for that. I feel like I might hate it more if I knew more about the Warrens. But I mean, as you know, because you could take this film to be completely, you could just laugh off the "this is a true story" stuff. You know, you could go, "Oh,
which is what I do."
These are completely fictional characters who have no real life analog. Yeah. And I like them perfectly fine in the context of that. If I knew more about the real life Warrens, I'd feel differently.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's The Conjuring, the 2013 James Wan masterpiece.
Man, what a way to bring Halloween 2021 to a close. So
I know.
What's next as we venture into the sort of antecedent to the spooky season?
The new year, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Patrick, what are we watching next time?
Well, I'm going to do a little bit of Chris's dirty work for him here. He said last episode that he was thinking about choosing this movie, and we are in fact going to watch another 2013 James Wan film next episode, Insidious Chapter 2.
Oh! Oh, he made both of those movies in 2013.
Yeah, they both came out in 2013 anyway.
Oh,
Is he Robert Altman? That's crazy.
Oh, guys, James Wan month. I can't believe it. We did 2 Alien movies, and now we're doing 2 James Wan movies, and I can't be more excited.
I just couldn't resist. We all know that I love the first Insidious, and I don't think it's spoilers because I'm sure I referenced it in our Insidious episode, but I loved Insidious Chapter 2 even more than Insidious 1 when I saw it. And honestly, is one of the most terrified, nerve-rattled experiences I've ever had in a fucking theater seeing this movie. So,
wow.
Like The Conjuring, I'm very curious to see how it sits with me the second time around.
And I know Steven wants to see more Patrick Wilson.
And more Insidious. We know Steven loves Insidious.
Well, no, I'm very curious now because, Chris, a couple of weeks ago, you had to remind me that I actually liked Insidious when we reviewed it on the show, which I completely forgot about. So, I'm curious. I'm curious. I've never seen Insidious Chapter 2, though.
Well, and actually, on the Patrick Wilson front, Steven, you're in for some shit because this is a Patrick Wilson role for the ages. I'm gonna say right now, you have never seen Patrick Wilson like this.
Yeah, this is a Patrick Wilson tour de force.
No.
This is a tour de. Well, listen, let's remind our listeners and remind Steven that Insidious Chapter 1, the original Insidious, ends with Patrick Wilson being possessed by a witch.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like the ooh, gotcha ending. Mm. And Insidious Chapter 2 does not flinch away from the ramifications of that ending.
Okay, I'm down.
It delivers on that promise. Dun, dun, dun.
All right, great. And then we can watch Aquaman after this for the following episode.
Dun, dun, dun.
All right, cool. Well, we'll see y'all back in 2 weeks to watch Insidious Chapter 2. James Wan. This is every James Wan movie on Netflix now.
Yes.
It certainly feels like it.
And we've got a few more to go through, I think.
Yeah. All right. Well, until then, find us online if you want, but otherwise we will catch you next time for every horror movie on Netflix. I'm Chris.
I'm Patrick.
I'm Steven.
See you later.
See you in Variety, bitches.